It's Friday, 13th of June, and we have many exciting updates for you this week. First up, we finally have our demo of the Elysian Acoustic Labs Apostle. And ever since I heard the prototype of this IEM at StereoNet, I've been really excited to listen to it again because it is like a smoother, bassier version of the Annihilator. And the low end on this earphone is just like some kind of delicious chocolate cake where you just want to This week we also received this. This is the Cayin RU9, a portable amp DAC with Korg new tubes, and ta-da, it works with MagSafe. So this thing is like a baby C9, and we're pretty excited about this one. We think it's going to be a bit of a game changer. So we'll talk more about both of these things in a future video, but for now, come in, have a listen, let us know what you think. For now though, I promised you that we'd talk more about this, the Dan Clark Noire XO, which is the open back version of the very popular Dan Clark Noire X. So the Noire X is probably my favorite Dan Clark at this point. It's a very neutral sounding headphone, but compared to the other Dan Clarks, it has a slightly pitchier upper mid-range. So it tends to push forward female vocalists, string instruments, and brass instruments, kind of like your average Audio-Technica. That's kind of my thing, and I know that on some tracks it really goes right over the edge. And for some people, they find that forward upper mid quite irritating. So we were really curious to see what the open back version of the Noire X would be like. Now, as you can see, the open back version of the Noire X shares the same chassis with the closed back version, but instead of the glass backplate, you now have a 3D printed open lattice. Besides looking similar, it actually sounds quite similar to the closed back version. That slightly honky upper mid-range is pulled back just a smidge on the XO, and because it's an open back, the low end is a little bit less resonant, so the bass notes tend to sound a little bit less rich. Now personally, I actually prefer the slightly more colored tone of the Noire X, but it's not a hill I die on because the difference between the closed back and the open back is not that significant. And I actually think that that's both a blessing and a curse for the Noire XO, because yes, the Noire XO isn't that different from the Noire X, and that's good because the Noire X is good. But for an open back, they didn't really mess with the formula, so they didn't really change the driver damping all that much. And consequently, it's not a very open sounding open back headphone. In fact, in listening to the Noire XO, there would be times where I forgot it was an open back headphone. And this is actually the exact same dilemma I had when I was evaluating the flagship Dan Clark audios, where the closed back Stealth and the open back Expanse weren't actually all that different in terms of soundstage. With the XO, you do get a slightly smoother, more natural tone, but with the open back design, you don't actually get a huge increase in soundstage, and you do lose some of the advantages in terms of noise isolation when you compare it to the closed back. It's actually a little bit more complicated with the Noire XO because in this case, the XO is more expensive than the Noire X. Anyway, come in, have a listen, let us know what you think. This is Lachlan from Minidisc TV, and we'll see you next time.